Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 34 of the Rugby League Coach podcast. I am the Rugby League Coach, rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. Owner Lee Addison is my name. Well, Lee Addison is my name. The first bit is what I do. I am joined by my regular sidekick, Taylor Brown. We've got Tim Cheeseman, who's had a little bit of a trim. His hair's a bit shorter for those who are looking on YouTube. You'll see it soon. And he looks a bit like Graham Gooch, the old English cricketer, I've got to be honest. And then James Varley's joining us from England. And I think we're going to get Coach Chris Budgeon joining us very shortly. So, first of all, Taylor, how's your week been? You'll be all excited. The football's back.
The football is back. The Dolphins are still undefeated. Life is good in the northern parts of Brisbane.
James, what's the weather like in England? And have you been down any alleys lately?
I haven't myself. Lee, no, I think so. No, I haven't. I've behaved fairly well lately.
Good lad. Well, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll bring that up in a minute. But we'll keep it tasteful, and we'll definitely be respectful of the people who have been affected. But it's certainly.
I don't know how tasteful it could possibly be, but anyway, we'll move on.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And Tim, freshly shorn Tim. What brought on the head shave and beard shave, mate? Is the trouble and strife just saying you need to look a bit younger, or?
No. I just woke up one morning and I just went, no. And face was a bit itchy, so I went, no, shave it off.
Okay.
This is 4 days ago. I shaved it all off.
Did you go bald kind of thing?
Yeah, raised it the whole lot.
Okay. That would have been interesting to see. Chris is joining us now, but we'll get straight into it because Chris is still connecting to the audio by the look of it on his iPad. Boys, I want to start on player behaviour in general. On both sides of the rugby league world, we've had an NRL player accused and charged with rape of a lady. In their wisdom, News Corp listed who was in court, in Brisbane court on Tuesday, I think it was. And there was an NRL player on that list, and then in the afternoon brought out a story saying that a high-profile NRL player had been charged with rape but couldn't be named for legal purposes. So, it didn't take a lot of people on socials much to join the dots. So that's that. And then over in England, we obviously had a player behaving badly. Joe Westerman has been caught in a social media, I don't know if you call it a sting. He was videoed doing something he shouldn't with somebody else's wife, even though he's a married man himself. We did joke at the start, didn't we, James, about the alley, but I must add the caveat now that people are seriously, lives have been turned upside down by this. So I want to start, boys, by talking about player behaviour. I've done a big post today. I'll no doubt mention and paraphrase some of that today, but just what we think about rugby league players' behaviour. Is it going to go away? Why is it such an issue? Is it such an issue? Take it where you want to. And Taylor, I'll start with you.
Well, I don't think there can be any arguments about whether it's an issue or not. It is an issue. It is constantly bringing the game into disrepute, which is the catchphrase they like to say. And anything that does bring the game into disrepute usually is followed by sanction. So that's the term I'll use. You can't necessarily avoid this happening, though. Unfortunately, I believe that you're just constantly going to have a new cycle of fresh, really good players coming through the NRL that aren't quite switched on. And it's just the nature of the beast when you have young men who think they're unstoppable, think they're on top of the world. These sorts of things can happen, certainly when there's alcohol involved. You can't stop players from drinking entirely. It's one thing that they can't do. They haven't found a way to do that through any sport around the world or any sort of professional scene, is to be able to stop them from doing that. I think there needs to be better measures put in place to help prevent them. I don't think the NRL can do much more in terms of education. Those programs are out there. Each player undergoes several of these programs before they get to the NRL. As soon as they're sort of prospects, they're shipped off to these camps. So I don't know how much the NRL can do in terms of education. I think there needs to be prevention put in, and that needs to be put in at club level, in my opinion, for this to stop. Curfews in and around football season, certainly. But again, that's still not going to stop the issue in the off season. So it's very concerning. certainly the rape charge, in my opinion, is disgusting. It's one of the lowest acts in our society known to mankind, and if it's true, then that player should face the full face of the law. But yeah, it's very disappointing being so close to the football season and still talking about scandals.
Chris, welcome to the podcast. I'm not sure you've met Tim before, Tim Cheeseman. Tim, meet Chris.
How you going, mate?
G'day, Tim.
Chris is a teacher and a coach in Southeast Queensland, just like I was once a teacher for a while. Where do you sit on the player behaviour, Chris? I mean, you're obviously a little bit older than me and Taylor. Where does it all stand, do you think, compared to maybe the 80s and whatnot?
Compared to the 80s, I don't know that it's happening more. Possibly it's happening less because in the 80s, the culture, women didn't have the voice that they have now. I think a little bit, and please, this is a complex issue that to unpack fully will take hours and hours and hours. So I think it's disgraceful. It disappoints me every time I hear it. Really, when is enough enough? Some of the factors involved, and I don't know anything about the case you're talking about yet, Lee. I haven't looked at the news today. But when you live your life in a bubble in some of the formative adult years, when you aren't exposed to a lot of responsibility, aren't expected to take a lot of responsibility for your life, there's going to be fallout. I'm actually still in a bit of shock. I knew nothing about this, and talking about it straight away is a little bit daunting.
Yeah, an NRL player has been charged with rape.
Yeah, and again, it's too much. I mean, is this happening in other sports? Is it coming to light because it makes news more in NRL? Is it? NRL players aren't the only people that are committing this offence, unfortunately. But really, when is enough enough? And to me, a life ban's too easy.
If the player alleged is found guilty, the disappointing thing would be there's nothing the game can't do anything at that stage. They're going to be going to jail. They're going to have these long-term sentences. The last thing is a punishment from the game. So it's like, if the threat already is there of long-term jail time, how can the game impose anything that's going to stop these sorts of players from doing these sorts of things? The threat's not a new one that's going to come in from Andrew Abdo or Peter Volandis or anything like that. The threat's there. It's in society. If you do this sort of act, you will be going to jail. That's out there. So it's a tough one to even police from the NRL's perspective.
My thoughts on this are that as a full-time professional sport, we're still in our infancy, right? Compared to football, compared to so many other sports. And that means that all of a sudden, in the last 20, 25 years, players had more spare time on their hands. What also happened was that money went through the roof because of TV deals and whatnot. So, excuse me a sec. Pardon me. So players started getting agents, and things started being publicised a lot more in certain places. So young kids started getting big heads. And what also happens is recruitment managers at clubs also pump tyres up, coaches pump tyres up at the special kids. So a lot of them live in a bubble from a very early age. You use the term, Chris, bubble, and you're right. We have agents and recruiters who overpromise and underdeliver. Not all of them. It's not a blanket statement. I'm just saying they exist. We had, for a while there, we had an NYC competition that put kids on TV before they even really became true adults and made superstars of them. And a lot of these kids just don't get to experience working on a building site, all the things that you can't get away with. I use a building site as an example, but any trade or whatever line of work, the things you can and can't say. They don't get to sit in offices with women. They go to an all-male environment. And that's all they know. But also, most of them earn very similar money to a lot of the people that they still hang around with as friends. So they have this paradoxical scenario where they're seen as superstars in most of their life, yet they still have friends and family pulling them in the direction of being normal. Because one thing that rugby league doesn't like is anybody sticking their head above the parapet, does it really? We're quite good at knocking it down. So there's this sort of paradox going on in the player's head all the time. And then the third thing I want to throw in is that because of full-time professionalism, players tend to drink less now, I think. And they have long periods off the grog or the whatever substances they sometimes take. And when they eventually decide to do that, be it the end of the season or the off season, to use a very Australian term, they're not Olympic drinking standard. They're not piss fit, right? And they go out drinking, it has big effects on them. And then if they take something else as well, it literally is a mind-boggling thing for somebody who's not touched it for 2 or 3 months. And a lot of the players that we're dealing with have massive rushes every week when they go and trot out on the field, and they sometimes need to escape from that. And I just think some of the things are mind-boggling. One thing I think rugby league is missing is the minders. So I do know when Des Hasler was at Manly, there was basically somebody who walked around with the team most of the time when they went out. In Des's first incarnation. And when you're talking about AFL players, or you're talking about soccer players or gridiron players or whatever, I think they might do a lot of this stuff, but a lot of it gets covered up.
Yep.
A lot of it also, gets paid off in newspaper form or whatnot. But I also think they must be smarter, because the people who video a lot of this, everybody's a paparazzi member now. Everybody's a roving reporter. So any of us can video anything and put it out there in the ether. And it doesn't tend to happen as much in other sports, does it? It does. Maybe there's a thirst for it in our media.
Well, I would say that we are in that weird spot that you mentioned, where if it happens in English soccer, if it happens in American football, if it happens in these sorts of places, money is available to shush it, to sweep it, to do all those things. If it happened in Australian soccer and Australian Union, it's not necessarily big enough. People don't recognise them on the streets as often as they do rugby league players or even AFL players in Melbourne, who is another sport that is prolifically known to be filmed on the streets and all sorts of issues coming apart of Melbourne. Melbourne AFL wags come under scrutiny, or ex-wags come under scrutiny for things that they've done, so it's also prevalent in that sport as well. And I think it's because they're just there. They're there. They're at that level where we're interested, but they're not at that level where they're global superstars, where they have a lot of money, where they can actually pay people off or sort it out or sweep it under the rug. So I don't think it happens anymore in this sport as it does in AFL. I think it's pretty even in that area, and I don't think it happens any more or less than probably the other sports. But some of them, Australian soccer, Australian Union, people don't care as much, and that's just the blatant truth. They're not as popular or global as Latrell Mitchell. I couldn't tell you who the best player running around Australian Rugby Union is right now, but I could name a lot of the players in AFL that are the best and the best.
Disagree with you about them not being as global. There'll be enough people around the world who know plenty of Wallabies players and Socceroos players. Bear in mind, they just played in the biggest the biggest football tournament in the world. So yeah, but I disagree with that statement. I think you're looking in the context of the Eastern Seaboard, Taylor. I think. I don't think the term Australia is right. I think it's the Eastern Seaboard of Australia. Queensland, New South Wales, a bit of Victoria. Because our players can't even walk around. Sorry, our players can walk around Victoria, can walk around Melbourne and not get noticed, So we don't have to go far to not get noticed. On the issue of Lee,
I think.
Sorry, Chris.
I'd just like to touch on one point and extend it a little bit, what you talked about earlier, Lee, about the fact that, they're not piss fit, which last week was a swear word, by the way, and this week it's not with the different host.
No, I spoke to the powers that be and got it cleared for this week.
Beautiful, because it shouldn't be. But you mentioned a really good point there. They are kept in a bubble at sometimes at 15, 16 years of age onwards. And when they are exposed to, when their off season comes around and they're letting their hair down and things like that, they're also celebrities now in New South Wales and Queensland. They get attention when they go out. And I would hazard a guess that many of them don't know how to handle that attention, and they may misread signals. I just thought that was a really good point you brought up, Lee, that they aren't sitting in offices with co-workers that are female, that they have learned to respect and treat as equals. I think that's a real relevant point, and I think I don't know how we fix it, and I don't know if you can fix it. Human beings are going to make mistakes. But on the point you mentioned about the other states, etc., would this be on the news in WA?
Well, I don't.
An AFL player, it would be. But
I think we'd still get it. I think we'd still get it. So I think a player behaving badly goes quite. If an AFL player had been accused of rape, I think we'd know about it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just a quick one, guys. What about the in some of their programs, like Taylor said at the start, like better programs and that sort of stuff? What about the equity and diversity in the workplace? I don't know. I haven't, because I'm retired. I haven't had to deal with like being in the workforce and with the equity and diversity. How often do you do the equity and diversity? Because when I was in the Defence Force, we were doing it every 3 to 6 months. Just getting everyone around to know, rightio, yes, that we're in a society where everyone is equal and everyone has rights. And what is kosher for some people isn't for others. And you've got to be able to distinguish between that. And even if the NRL started that at a younger age, like when these kids are first starting to get signed and that sort of stuff, I was just wondering, when do you guys do equity and diversity and that sort of stuff?
I think that's there. I honestly think that the programs from the NRL are rolled out. You could maybe address the ages. You could maybe address those sorts of things. But certainly when I was playing sort of 20s in that era, it was there. It was 100% there.
It's obviously not working though, Taylor, is it? It's not big enough. I mean, I made a point in the post I did that you've got to repeat it. You've got to repeat these messages until you're blue in the face. And
but I also think a PowerPoint doesn't do it.
No.
But I don't think a player that's that drunk in that position is thinking about what he learnt in the PowerPoint, no matter how many times you drilled it into there.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? I still don't believe that if you repeated that PowerPoint every day for 10 years, if that player was in the state that I'm sure they're probably in at that time, I don't think they're thinking about a PowerPoint, mate. I don't know. And I want to be clear, I don't know the answer. I don't know if they're doing enough or they're not doing enough. I can't see. You've got to play better with the cards you dealt, haven't you? So NRL has got to perform better. NRL players have got to perform better. James, I'm going to bring you in here because Joe Westerman has been put on a program to educate fellow players on the dangers of alcohol, and that would be something that I suggest would work well in Australia too. Ex-players who've ended up being, if Todd Carney was going around to all the players saying this is what happens if you do X, Y, Z, or Mitchell Pearce saying, well, if you have but conversely, in England, James, this Westerman thing, it actually got it front page of the Sun newspaper, I think. Which is huge in England. This is like the biggest. Yeah. This is the biggest rugby league story in England for a long time.
You've just brought up what I was going to say, that rugby league doesn't often make the headlines over here, but it does when things like that happen. Which is backing up like your point of the players in Australia who aren't that high profile. It will always make the news. I mean, when Sam Burgess, when the events were happening, it was news up. I don't actually buy newspapers, but I was looking online about it, and all the papers ran articles on it, like they have with Joe Westerman, and that's the thing. But it's finding that, I suppose it's finding that balance over here, that they are rugby league players are more come from down to earth, and they're not high profile. But when they're out, they're getting female attention and all that sort of thing, and that can cause problems, and that's the aspect. But it's being educated on that. But rugby league isn't high profile enough here for the players to have minders when they go out.
No, definitely not.
It is bad publicity for the game, I suppose, if you look at it like that. I don't know, but
you could argue. You could argue any publicity is good publicity.
I was thinking that when I just said it.
Yeah.
They said publicity is good.
I'm going to stay with you, James, and I'll go on to the next topic. We've covered that, and we don't want to depress everyone. World Club Challenge. World Club Challenge. St Helens are visiting Penrith.
Right.
You're very much a one-eyed Englishman. Can St Helens beat Penrith?
No. in a word, whether they played, I think even if they played it over here, they wouldn't have a chance. Even with the difference of the climate and everything and the climatising. I just think the gap between the two leagues is vast. St Helens have got a good record for years. They've done very well, but it's, if you put any British team in the NRL now, which probably will never happen, but if you tried that, I don't think any British team will get anywhere near the top half of the league.
Not for a while, anyway.
No.
Mate, you could put any Super League side on the top end of Mount Everest and try and defend it from Penrith, and they wouldn't bloody do it, even if you didn't change ends at halftime.
I'm going to do what we did with the finals. I'm just going to go around and saying who's going to, we'll predict the winner. So, James, St Helens or Penrith?
Penrith, convincingly.
Give me a scoreline, like a margin.
20 points, I reckon.
Taylor
that
Brown?
Might be a bit conservative, actually. But...
Penrith by 40.
Tim Cheeseman?
Penrith by 30 plus.
Christopher?
Yeah, I'd probably go 40, but I'd drop it back to 30 plus just because there might be a few cobwebs in Panthers.
Right, now I'm going to ask you all another question. And I want you to just focus on the match now. And then in a minute, we'll talk about Super League and NRL and the competitions. Why are you all so convinced it's going to be one-sided? I'll start with you, Chris. What have you seen
James?
to make you think that? Or are you just...
history and my belief that the gap between the games on both sides of the field is so far. It's a different style of game also. I think playing here, Penrith will pull them into the wrestle and they'll be better at it. And let's not forget, this is a cracking Penrith side. They've been pretty good for a little while. And I guess we can, if Penrith take it seriously, I think they'll wipe the floor with them.
Tim?
Yeah, I really think 30 plus, just for the sheer fact that St Helens have come over for a couple of weeks to get accustomed to the temperature and everything like that. The NRL's put the game back a little bit later so that it's not as hard on the players. But that Panthers team, they've got that many high quality kids coming through. It's phenomenal when you've got the likes of the players that are leaving or have left Panthers. There's 2 or 3 more kids coming through just as good and have been doing the same thing, where I haven't seen St Helens really play really good football. Like they're a good team for the Super League. I just don't believe that it's anywhere near what is a high standard when you're playing against Panthers. It'd be the same with any of the top 4 teams in the NRL.
Taylor, sorry.
the top 8 in Australia is really, really good. They all seem to follow.
I think the top 4 are. I think the bottom 4 is questionable. The bottom 4 of the 8. I mean, Taylor, everything that's been said about Penrith, about the junior system, etc., etc. You know, Saints have won 4 Super League titles on the trot, and they are probably one of the market leaders over there in terms of developing their own youngsters and getting them to Super League.
Yeah, and I do agree with you, Lee. They are. I don't think they're not a quality side. I do think they're a quality outfit. I do think they've got good coaching. They've obviously been together for a couple of years. They've done extremely well. It's a fantastic squad. A squad you'll talk about for years to come in the Super League. I've got no doubt. But my answer is more on recent form. I don't think they played very good football against what essentially was almost a C rate St George Illawarra Dragons side. And that Dragons side, they didn't pump out their best, nor are they really a top 4 NRL side, nor are they really a top 8 NRL side at the moment. I think you could argue if they played their best football this year, they would be very lucky to scrape into the top 8 in the NRL. And then you look at the dominance that the Panthers have put on in previous seasons. There's not too many really key changes. I mean, Dylan Edwards out is huge. Crichton coming into the fullback position. He's still probably going to be a fantastic player there. He'll be playing fullback for the Bulldogs. So I don't think that's a huge loss. And the Penrith, I know it's all in the trial, but their young guns, I watched that game of the week and they stood up. They showed killer instincts. Penrith won every single competition there is to win last year. It wasn't just the NRL, you know. I think this Penrith side's red hot. They're coming in from a good trial form against Para. It's not just the difference in competition for me. It's not just the difference in week-to-week competition. It's also how they've gone recently, and I just think Penrith blow them out of the water there too.
James, being an Englishman in England, how does it feel when you hear these Aussies talking about the best British team like this?
I just feel sadly it's the truth at the moment, and that's that rugby league, as I said before, has been in decline in this country for the last 15 years, certainly 10, 11, 12 years since about 2010-ish, probably. And it just feels, maybe St Helens, they've had a great record, but I suppose when you only have to rise to the standard of the opposition to beat that opposition and playing week to week, they've not had to be. They've not always had to perform. I mean, look at. I'll give an example. A team like Warrington, who have spent lots and lots of money, have just constantly underachieved, and they should be great competition for Saints that they haven't been. I think last year Matty Peake did a good job with Wigan, tried to get them sorted out, but maybe it showed last year with Rowan Smith coming to Leeds that they were virtually bottom of the table when he came. He just turned them around completely, got to the grand final. What
do you think? I think, boys, because you've not asked me my opinion.
I think you're going to agree with us potentially.
I think you will agree with us to an extent. I think you do expect there to be a little bit closer than what I said, at least. But I know you have been extremely critical of the pathways in England at the moment, the lack of international schedule and the effect that's had on the domestic competition.
Yeah.
And also the lack of funding at a pathway level. But that's a good point, Tim. Obviously, someone's crying out for attention as the host. What do you think, Lee? Tell us.
Hi, guys. My name's Lee. I've coached in both England and Australia and on both pathways and whatnot. Look, I know the English psyche, funnily enough, and I just think Saints will be superbly up for this. Penrith will be up for it, because I think Penrith are very professional, and they've also stated in the media they're very keen to win it. But I think it means more to the British than it does the Australians, if I'm completely honest. There's also a couple of experienced NRL players in that side, in the St Helens side. William Hopoate, Conrad Hurrell was the name too. And they're obviously, I think William could have still commanded another NRL contract, but I think Conrad was sent over because there were some weaknesses in defence, but he's still a great personality to have around the club and whatnot. So I think they'll make a massive fist of it. And I agree with you, Chris, that Penrith are going to be a little bit ring rusty. because they've not played yet together this year. So like all NRL teams seem to be doing, they're playing their top deck this week for the first time. So of course there's going to be slight combination issues. I think the second half, it'll just start to ebb away. So I'm going more towards the 20 mark rather than the 40 mark. And that's not me looking at it with English glasses. I mean, I copped a bit on Facebook last week because I was telling people to relax, just because St. Helens are winning this game against St. George's under 21s. Like, it didn't mean anything. And in the context of it, and I don't think St. Helens were particularly clinical either. And I know they've flown over here and acclimatizing and all this, but it's no indicator. St. Helens nearly had a top deck on last week against St. George. Like, it's, and, and some St. Helens fans really say, oh, I've lost a lot of respect for this page now and all this. And I was just stating facts that St. Helens, the 4-time champions of England, were playing against a team that finished 10th, reserves and under 21s. So if everything was equal, you'd expect that to be 50-0 to the English team, but it wasn't. So, Penrith are going to win, but I think a combination of Penrith being a tiny bit clunky, St. Helens being up for it, is going to be a bit of a game on.
Does anybody think it would be different if it was played in England with an English referee to the more English style of play?
Well, the history of the World Club Challenge, if you look at it, is that if an Australian team arrives the weekend before a game, they get beat. So if they arrive, say, Saturday and then play the following Friday, they tend to get beat. I ask you to have a look, because I know you love old rugby league, you lot. Have a look at the 1989 World Club Challenge between Canberra and Widnes at Old Trafford. Canberra were wiping the floor, absolutely wiping the floor with Widnes in the first 20 minutes. And then the juice just ran out of them. They were jet lagged. They were still jet lagged.
Yeah, sorry, Lee. Sorry.
Yeah. And so whenever an English team has faced an Australian team in the cold weather, I remember when the Bulldogs came over in 04, I think it was, or 05.
Played Leeds.
Yeah, the coaching staff were dressed in Hawaiian shirts. The head coach went for I'm going to say the word again, a pee. I nearly said it again, Chris. Went for a pee on the main concourse of the stadium halfway through the first half. They weren't taking it seriously, boys. Whenever a team has come over to take it seriously, gone over to England to take it seriously, tend to win.
Well,
to be quite honest about it.
Look about when Ricky Stewart brought his Roosters team over in the early 2000s when Morley was playing. I think it was Roosters 40, St. Helens 6 or something like that.
And even more recently, I mean, if you look at some of the recent ones, most NRL teams, because obviously the NRL teams have got better at doing it as well themselves, because they share experiences. Trent Robinson would never underplay the World Club Challenge.
The Roosters are really good at it, aren't they? They made a bit of a camp out of it those last couple of times and went over for a couple of weeks. And you almost need to do it the way Saints have done it this year. Go over and play a trial against someone else and take your whole squad. And you know what I mean? It costs a lot of money. It's not cheap, but it's.
What happened in the early days of this last recent reincarnation of the World Cup Challenge is that NRL teams came over, had a bit of a party, which is a bit of a tradition with touring sides in general. And then the first few rounds of the NRL were a mess for them. Whereas now they're a bit more scientific about the whole thing and factor it into their prep, So yeah, I mean, there's another point I want to get to. How can you have the Super Bowl of Rugby League at the start of the season? It just doesn't make sense, does it? It's a great concept, but surely we should be doing this 1 week after the grand finals of each competition.
Do you think?
Or 2 weeks.
Do you think if the Super League competition was as competitive, or if it was going to be a closer match, do you think we would do that?
Well, I think it's a great marketing thing just to say.
Yeah.
you're the world champion at the end of a season rather than at the start. Because let's face it as well, right?
Yeah, but
Saints have Penrith have lost 2 of their players. Saints have changed coach.
Yeah, I get that. I 100% get that. And it's weird because it's not the same squad. It's not the same team. I understand that. But it's sort of like, how can you go from, playing an NRL grand final or a Super League grand final? Like, I think the NRL team, as fine-tuned as that, ready and raring to go, I just think that it's every year they win.
Maybe, and then it's up to England to try and reach that standard.
Possibly.
I think we're possibly discounting the fact that some of the NRL boys would still be a little bit dusty the week after.
And so are the Super League players. Unless
it is actually as important as the Super Bowl, I don't think you'll ever get the buy-in of that.
I'm going to give you a similar thing. You know, the state championship, and then they put the Queensland Cup winners against the New South Wales Cup winners.
Exactly.
Both of them teams tend to be inebriated after winning their particular state titles.
Yeah.
And the best
haven't they become little blowouts?
Yeah. It'll never be big unless when we treat it as a pre-season competition, will it?
I mean, a prime example of this players being underdone is look at Samoa in the first game of the World Cup against England. Look what happened, and then look what happened a few weeks later.
You know, and as professionals, they've got to deal with that. I mean, if you win the NRL and you turn up for a world title game, dusty, you deserve everything that's coming to you. But the other thing too is, what do you accept as a professional? You know, so I know a lot of people who haven't had that opportunity would snatch their hands off, and they would have a few beers after winning said grand final, but they wouldn't go on a Mad Monday, and they'd save the Mad Monday until after they won the world title.
Yeah, you save your Mad Monday. You have a few beers, sure. You cut it off that night. I think that would be the go. Is you drink till maybe you go midnight. You cut off, boys. You're done. But anyway, maybe if you added the weekly like the Super Bowl, because that's what they do in the Super Bowl. They play them separate championships, then they have a fortnight till they reconvene for the Super Bowl. Maybe if you added that fortnight in for whichever team it was to fly out, they have their drink on after they win the grand final. Monday they do a recovery session. Maybe Wednesday morning or Tuesday night they fly out, and then they've got over a week to be trying to get over jet lag.
Yeah, but guys, we got to be really careful here. We got a 27-round NRL competition coming up. We want standalone state of origins. We want an international season. We can't be playing footy 52 weeks of the year.
That's true.
Very true.
I know a lot of the English players from the World Cup, they've come out today and said that they want to make amends for the game that they played against Samoa and the Tongan boys. They really want to show that wasn't their best football, and honestly, it wasn't. It was their worst game that they played in the World Cup, and it was the semi-final.
You know, you mentioned not playing many games. You know, if you ask any rugby league player, they'd rather play than train.
Yeah,
I think it's the training that's killing them.
Yeah, but what would Clint Newton say?
Well, hang on. Before we say anything about Clint, he's been a little bit reasonable this week, hasn't he? They have some.
Clint Newton isn't God, Chris. And if there's more money in the pot, isn't that Chris Newton's job? Get his players more money.
The Rugby League Players Association, they've got
only one game.
They've got a collective bargaining agreement. It's not as simple as just adding on and tacking on more games. But the other thing I'd like to highlight is if we were going to invest more into anything outside of the NRL competition, I think it has to be international rugby league. I think we have to see more Pacific Island games. I think we have to see more international rugby league.
But staying on that point, what's the difference between having the game at the end of the season and the start of the season? They're still playing that game. Penrith is still playing St. Helens, but they're doing it at the end of the season rather than the start. What is the difference? It means they have to stay off the drink for 2 more weeks. Isn't it? That's what it means.
Would you postpone it, though, in a World Cup year?
Probably. Probably have to. And Andrew, I think it's even I think the Broncos played a World Cup challenge the same year as a World Cup final. I think they did, James, didn't they? 1992. So the Broncos just stayed there.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And I remember Broncos winning that one against that Wigan team.
They won that, and then they won the World Cup final.
They did.
So that. I mean, let's face it, right? Let's put it into last year. Let's say St Helens played Penrith in the last game of the year before the World Cup, right?
Yeah, right.
The World Cup started 2 weeks after Super League, I think, and 3 or 4 weeks after the NRL, something like that. So let's say we managed to fit it in. Most of the Penrith players were in the country.
Yeah.
Anyway, playing for Samoa, Tonga, or Australia.
Yeah.
So, as long as the World Cup Club Challenge is in the host country of the World Cup, Chris, then I think
you could get it done.
They might be able to bring it in. I just think that
even a startup like 2 weeks before the actual World Cup, whatever nation it is in, have a World Cup challenge in that country. Like
you've got
it's in France. Then have the Super League final.
I think
finals.
our problem with it is that it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So our mindset is geared towards grand finals. But the reason it isn't there yet is because we've never put it at the right time of year. It's now essentially, I dare say some people still refer to it as a trial on Saturday. It's lobbed in with all the other trials, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so...
Yep.
And on the subject of trials, boys, where's our heads at with that? Taylor, we've not heard from you for 2 minutes.
Which is a record. Where are our heads at in terms of what, Lee? In terms of the weekend trials?
Yeah, well, what did you take from them?
I certainly didn't have the enthusiasm that I thought I would to watch as many as I would. I did watch a couple. I put them on when it wasn't on. I will admit to the listener that I did watch the Volkanovski fight instead of a lot of the games that were on Sunday. But yeah, look, I still think it's a good concept that they're filming them. I'd love to know what the ratings say about it. But yeah, mate, long live the televised trials.
Tim?
Yeah, I watched a lot of it on KO, so I watched some of the minis because I was in and out all day. But I thought it was good to see some of the young talent coming through. And it was young talent on young talent. I think that was more of an even understanding when both the second halves, when all of the key players weren't actually on the field. I thought it made a more interesting and even sort of game.
Yeah.
When the key players were on, you could see that it was very clunky because they weren't used to playing with those players as such. Like you'd have your 9, 6, 7, and 1, your spine playing together, but not having your outside backs, or you'd have your outside backs playing with a young set of halves, and that was a little bit up and down and that sort of stuff. I understand the guys need to get match fit and everything, but I was more interested in actually watching the young kids coming through and seeing some of their ability and sting that they had was phenomenal. Just even take, for instance, the Warriors fullback. He carved up. Yes, he made a couple of mistakes, but he carved up some really decent players.
How much did you watch, Chris, and where's your head at with it all?
I watched probably more than I may have if the cricketers didn't do us a favour.
We can talk about cricket if you want. England have had a great day.
I watched a bit of it, Lee, and to me it's good that it's on because it's something to watch over the weekend, but I'm not emotionally invested in trials, and I'm certainly not emotionally invested in the scorelines. But it is great to see some of the young talent coming through. I think it's interesting. I enjoy watching footy. But yeah, for that reason, to more watch the game itself rather than a result, and it was there were some good things. I certainly agree that young Hayes Perham did really well for the Warriors. But again, how do you? It's difficult to measure anything because we're not comparing apples with apples, and we're not comparing full strength sides with full strength sides. But yeah, some individuals were really good to see.
James, does the Super League start this weekend?
It does. Warrington and Leeds are playing tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, starts today. So
the Super League is starting 2 weeks before the NRL. I think it's 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks, Taylor?
Is it?
To the NRL?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it ends 1 week later.
Well,
so Clint, you won't be happy about that, Chris, would it? There's a lot of games there, plus the Easter weekend, Good Friday, Easter Monday.
How many games do they play in a year compared to our boys?
Well, have you not noticed when a player plays his career in England, they have like 600 career games, and they've still got 3 years left. And
we've got the Talent Cup as
in
well.
Australia, they tend to end at 300-ish.
Did anyone see Anthony Albanese's claims about rugby league yesterday?
What did he say, old elbow?
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese believes the Rabbitohs will win the 2023 NRL Premiership. He thinks they'll either beat the Doggies as the Bolters. He's thinking a Bunnies Dogs grand final, and if the Dogs aren't there, it'll be the Roosters.
Okay, elbow, yeah. Who's going to win it, James? The competition, the NRL and Super League?
I think Super League. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting. The interesting thing is Paul Wellens putting his teeth this season.
I agree.
That'll be an interesting one.
I agree.
I don't know. I don't know. It'll be Rowan Smith. Did very well last year. I'd say they've got a chance. I don't think. I'm still not. People going about Warrington, seeing how they'll do. That'll be interesting. I think there's a lot of pressure on Darryl Powell.
Agree.
Which year?
Tim, 2 competitions.
I think Leeds.
Okay.
Might come through for the Super League.
Yeah.
And it's hard to go against the Panthers, but probably an outside dark horse, the Cowboys.
How big's the loss of Viliami Kikau?
Huge, I'd say.
I think it's massive.
I think so too.
Really good player.
But then again, you've got Ricky, the young Ricky, who's with the Panthers. He's the same sort of build as his brother, but under the coaching of Ivan Cleary, I think he might even he'll turn some heads this year. I don't know how many first grade games he'll get, but with what Kikau has done under Cleary and the support staff there, I think the young Ricky.
Taylor, I'm not going to ask you about Super League because you won't have a clue, but the NRL, who's going to win it?
Rowan Smith, for me, with Leeds, he gets an extra year. I thought Tom Opachik going to Hull Kingston Rovers, I really like Tom Opachik, and I think it shows, I think it's smart from Hull Kingston Rovers, the way that they've recruited a younger style centre to go. What are you laughing at? Hull KR, what's wrong with that?
I didn't say anything.
He's probably laughing from his phone.
It's a good. I'm just laughing at Taylor talking as if he's like.
It's a good attitude,
Steve-O.
It's a good attitude from Hull KR to go for a younger style centre as opposed to someone that's over the hill.
You just read it on the news or something.
I didn't.
You've just named the 2 Australians that are over there and decided that.
I think it's a good way as a club to poach younger sort of footballers in the middle of their career as opposed to going players on the back end. I think it's
who's going to win the NRL?
Oh my God, Lee! Sometimes you and I just need to. I think I'd like to create some controversy if I saw you in an alleyway, mate. Just give you a left, right. I'd love to bring the game in disrepute with you. I reckon. I honestly think the Roosters will be very hard to beat this year with the forward pack. I just love they have such an aggressive forward pack with lots of really good skill in there as well. I think they're going to be outstanding this year. Keary and Walker combining again, and their backline is just sensational. Injuries will hurt them as they are quite a top-heavy side. We saw that last year. They have a few injuries, and they do lose a little bit of momentum. But I think this year, I think the Roosters are the team to claw it back from the Panthers.
If Cleary gets a head knock, do you think his career's over?
Keary.
I reckon you've had an head knock. You called Kiri Cleary.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see the dent now. You shaved it.
Yeah. There's a couple, mate.
Tim looks a bit ill, actually. I'm a bit worried about him. Shaved head and no teeth.
He supports the Bunnies, doesn't he? I think his career is not over. I don't think his career is over. If he gets one. Keary's.
Oh.
If he gets a head knock, depends how bad. I would like to see him look after his own health. But
James, did you pick your nose then?
No, I just scratched my nose.
You see the booger in your mustache, son.
I'll watch the video replay of that. Chris, NRL and Super League.
Haven't followed much of the Super League for a while, but I am a fan of Rowan Smith. From what I've seen him do at North.
Let's name an Aussie we know in the NRL in the Super League.
That's pretty much that's. I'm taking. Wait till you hear my next point, and you'll know that I've just copied and pasted Taylor, because I actually think the Roosters are going to win it if they can keep their front rowers on the field. That's a pretty strong 3 or 4 front rowers that they've got there, and their backline is just. I mean, Joey Manu just keeps getting better and better. If Keary was to miss a few games, they didn't even miss a beat with Joey Manu, and possibly even played better. I think Sam Walker's also coming along really nicely. I think the Roosters are going to be hard to beat, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they'll play Cronulla in the grand final.
I was just going to mention Cronulla. I think the jury's out on them because they went out quite easily in the semis. They had a decent draw. I don't think they've recruited a hell of a lot in the off-season, have they?
I don't think you could really call them a heavyweight yet.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think you can call the Cowboys a heavyweight yet, to be fair.
I did finish second though last year. Remember?
But it's not a fair draw, is it? You don't play everybody home and away twice.
Cowboys were outstanding. Yep. Cowboys were outstanding, but the Roosters and Penrith have been very successful for a long time.
Out of the two, I'd go Cowboys.
Yeah, definitely Cowboys over the Sharks in terms of a heavyweight. But I can't see the spine the Roosters have. How Brandon Smith melded into that. I was a little bit hesitant and unsure, but I think those questions will get answered fairly early on. And that, for me, that's the biggest question mark I have in their entire team.
So I'm going to focus on the other end of the table, right? I see people queuing up not to be in the 8, right?
Yep.
The Broncos ain't going to make the 8 again.
I believe so as well.
If they do, they're going to be 8th.
Mm-hmm.
The Tigers ain't going to make the 8. If it was
as long as we're not 17th.
If they
That's
were...
it.
The problems at that club go a lot deeper. They can't just be turned around in. I'm not saying they're not going to have a better season. I'm not saying they're not going to have a better season. The other one is the Bulldogs. I think there's still gaps in that roster.
There's gaps in the roster, Lee, but there is a rise in stock, in my opinion, from where they were this year to where they go to. I think the real losers out of this year will be, I can't see the Knights getting any better. I can't see that. I can see them, if anything, dropping, and I can't see the Dragons getting much better. I can see them dropping.
Dragons will struggle a bit.
I can't see them getting any better as a team. I just don't think they've added anything, and haven't lost anything either, but they just didn't show me anything. I think the Dolphins will surprise a lot of people. Their problem is their depth, probably, with an older style forward pack. Does that come back to bite them? Probably. But look, I think you could pretty much name your top 8 or roundabouts now.
Dolphins will give the 8 a nudge.
I believe so.
For one reason, they've got a very experienced coach who knows what to do.
And I think they clean up Origin period. I think they clean up. Who do they lose in Origin? Tom Gilbert, probably. Maybe the Hammer off the bench. I don't think they lose anyone else during Origin period.
It'll be interesting.
Maybe Kafusi, but he's sort of getting to that hill now where he may be left alone for Origin. Maybe a bench spot. But yeah, I think that they don't lose much during Origin because the Bromwich boys are Kiwi, and Jared Wallace has previously played Origin, but a lot of those hard-nosed forwards for them will stick around. So yeah, I don't think they lose anything during Origin period, so I think that might be a good time for them to gain.
I think probably they'll be the second most successful Queensland team after the Cowboys. I think they'll finish above the Broncos, do you reckon?
I do too. I really do. I really believe that. I
Mm.
don't think you're far off the mark there at all. I can't see the Broncos having a successful year. I mean, if you just label off the top of your head, Storm, Roosters, Cowboys, the Rabbitohs, who still have a really good side, that's your top four.
Panthers.
Panthers, I haven't mentioned yet.
Parramatta.
Parramatta. There's six right there that you can pretty much lock into your top six straight away. And that's without talking about your Canberras of the world and a few people like that who are really mixing around that top half of the bottom 10, can I say? So, yeah, I think that it's going to be a tough year if you're a Dragons fan or a Tigers fan. No, sorry, Dragons or a Knights fan. Small improvements if you're a Tiger or a Dog, but still nothing crazy out of this world. Broncos fans will be severely disappointed. Manly fans, I think, will be disappointed if they can't keep Trebojevic on the paddock. If they can, they might make up one of those last 2 8 spots.
As you know, when I host, because I'm like the best host here, I always like to end the podcast with something not related to rugby league. So, what I'd like
City got up.
Yes, City got up. Yes, City top of the league where they belong. Laughing at the circus down below. They got
more money.
And more goals and more points. But the subject today is we're all at different ages of life. The subject is, I'm going to tell you, last weekend I had a couple of nights out, Friday and Saturday. I had a bit of a go at it, right? And I reckon Sunday I felt a bit anxious, because you just have the heebie-jeebies a bit. Monday, you just feel a bit depressed. Tuesday, you've just got brain fog. Wednesday, you're sort of feeling good again. Thursday, you're perfect. And then Friday, you start all over again at the tackle. Getting older, things change, don't they? And it's not just drinking. It's quite a lot of things, isn't it? We'll go in descending age order. Who's the oldest amongst us here?
Chris won't.
From what I know, I think it'll be me.
What are you, Chris, if you don't mind?
53, turned 54 this year.
What are you, James?
48.
Tim?
43.
So you're younger than me, yeah. Taylor, what are you now?
Absolutely none of your business. And I can't believe that you think this is an appropriate line of questioning as the host, mate. I cannot believe that.
Stop just trying to have a dig at me because I'm better than you.
And I'm 29.
Chris, talk about aging. What changes?
I actually love getting older for a lot of reasons. As they say, I wish I knew when I was Taylor's age what I know now.
Yes, little Taylor in the corner, the child.
Unfortunately, the body doesn't agree and certainly couldn't do the things that someone Taylor's age could do.
So you're saying the mind is willing, but the flesh is weak?
And many, many other Shakespearean quotes, definitely. It's
what are the things you notice? Keep it PC, obviously. But
well, if I'm interpreting your line of questioning, I certainly didn't think I'd find 50-year-old women attractive when I was 29.
Okay.
Having said that, if my wife ever listens to this, she's obviously the most beautiful person.
Yeah.
But I think, you certainly appreciate the fairer sex for a lot more than fake eyelashes and bottle blondes and whatever else, the other shit they put in their face.
James?
I think Chris is fairly right, really, that you do appreciate different things in life as you do get older.
Yes.
I don't think always the mind ages as much as the body does.
No, it grows. I believe the mind grows. I don't think I've reached my zenith yet.
No,
Go on, sorry.
I think you do. I think as you get older, you do know what you want in life, and you know what targets to set and everything, and you plan a bit more. I mean, I'm fortunate when going back to the night out thing. I don't suffer from hangovers. I never have. So I'm very, very, very lucky with that.
I think you need to drink the beer in Australia, mate. The preservatives in it, that'll set you back a few.
That'd be interesting.
Tim, I want to bring another one up before you talk. Training. Like, I can still do a lot of the things I've always been able to do, but the next day or two are an issue. Or, yeah.
Definitely. With me, I'm just going to be starting back at the gym, and I know it's going to kill me.
It's going to be a longer journey, isn't it? To get where you want to get to. Yeah.
Yes, I know what I was capable of, and what I can do now is nowhere near it. But my priorities changed dramatically.
Now, I wanted this to be a funny topic rather than like a deadly serious one, which is turned into Taylor. Are you showing any signs of aging yet? I mean, you retired from rugby league early, I think, not because of age, but because you're fundamentally lazy.
Oh no, I think it's just weird that you've skipped over yourself because,
mate, I'm the host.
Actually, no, it makes sense because even though I'm younger than you, I think I'm far more mature than you. I think I've got you covered comfortably in the maturity section.
I think maturity can be confused sometimes with boring.
Oh, so you think I'm boring?
Why can't you have a bit of fun when you're of a certain age?
I do have fun. I just have different fun to you. You're the type of guy that laughs at farts still. And I just...
Does that make you childish?
That's what I'm saying. You're the only teacher I've ever had that actually laughed with me at the back of the class. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Have you got any aging going on, even though you're only 29?
I don't think I have. I actually... don't often feel I feel 22 or 23 still. The only thing that is really different from me at that time is because I was playing football at that time. So I was a lot fitter and I guess a lot healthier. And I didn't have kids. So I don't feel I feel aged every day when I wake up because you're half asleep. You're half a zombie at some stages of having kids. But other than that, like I don't feel overly, I certainly do a lot of different things than I ever did back then, but I don't feel my age. Like I'm going to a 30th on the weekend, and I look at me mate that's turning 30. I go, how the hell is he 30? And then I have to go, well, hang on, you're turning 30 in November, you idiot. So, I don't know. Just
you're getting old when you go to more funerals and birthdays, and you get different calendar.
Yeah.
Or you go to people's second marriage, second wedding.
That's right. Well, I said at my dad's 60th, started last year. I said a speech. I said, I don't want to get rid of too much of my material on him because I'll be writing a eulogy for the big fella soon. He said anymore.
Chris, just to put it in some kind of context.
Dark humor.
1 week we were talking about folding or scrunching. So
I heard.
I was trying to make it entertaining for you, but everyone made it dead serious. So.
And Lee's barbaric as he was a scruncher, as you can imagine. And he wonders how I call myself more mature. That's just economical. I don't see how you.
I've got to have a look. I mean, sometimes when you have to be cost cutting or whatever, you've got to have a look at things. One of the things I need to look at is how many of the toilet tickets I'm using because the scrunching seems to get through the toilet roll really quickly. Like
I'd love to ask maybe an AI robot. Those AI robots you send questions into. How they feel about you, who's more mature, and what it says about your maturity levels that you're a scruncher.
I reckon it's because of the contour of my
anus.
Yeah, my sphincter. Like I've just got to sort of just better for it,
Yeah, right.
Here's a good one for you guys. Do you have a top sheet or just a doona?
Doona. I have two doonas. For those in England, they're called quilts.
Here's another good question for you, Chris, because we covered this extensively. You may or may not remember. Do you sleep nude or do you put pajamas on?
You're obsessed with that, Taylor.
I
think he sits there.
Generally just have a pair of footy shorts or something like that.
No.
What do you sleep
with, teenage kids, mate? I've got to have something on.
That's it, Tim. That's it. There are certain things.
James, how many layers have you got on in bed?
I just got like one quilt, one duvet, and that's all I have, and then just boxer shorts. Usually, that's it. Yeah. Being honest,
Taylor goes all natural, has everything swinging.
I do. I don't know if I told you guys a story.
Wait till your kids become teenagers and dad goes out the window, mate.
Did I tell you guys a story about my house getting broken into and I was in the nude? My house.
Tell that.
I don't know if I told my house got broken into, and my wife woke me up in the middle of the night. She said, "I think I heard the garage door open." I was thinking, "No way." Anyway, so I've walked down the hallway and looked in the garage, and here's a bloke standing right there, like face to face with me. Anyway, I've lost me marbles.
Did he look down?
He must have, because he took off pretty quick. And I've got out and naturally started chasing, and the garage door's open. So I've chased him halfway down the street, completely nude, yelling out all sorts of obscenities like, "If I catch you, blah, blah, blah." And it wasn't until I come back, I realized my wife said, "What happened?" I said, "There was blokes in the bloody garage." She said, "Oh, were you just running down the street naked?" I said, "Yeah, I was."
He ran, Taylor, because he was afraid of getting clubbed to death.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I asked all my neighbours to see if they had any footage, and then I realised if they did, it probably wouldn't be worth. I wouldn't want to look at it.
Oh, you should. Oh, it must have been cold out there. It must have been cold in Redcliffe in December.
I'm sorry. I was running down the street naked. Were you? I couldn't see anything.
Like we've said before, the microphone is a metaphor. So, Chris, great to see you again. Tim, great to see you again. It's hit and miss. I don't know when you're joining us. James, glad we could fit it in your week. You look like James Bond or something, the way you got your coat on today. The
image.
And Taylor, always good to see you, lad. So, what a podcast, and no wonder the numbers are going through the roof. More people listen to it. The numbers on the listening are good. It's the YouTube, not as many people watch it. So,
can you maybe do some stats on how many listeners and viewers we get for who hosts, or is there any sort of correlation there?
Mate, if I were you, I'd just leave that in the box because I don't want to upset you, son.
Mate, you control the statistics. So I'm very worried about that.
Great stuff, boys. Good to see you all. Take care.
Bye, lads.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. See ya.